Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. So we've done the goalkeepers. We're going to work on a very important position. Some would say the most important position to improve within Ten Hag's system. What striker will he go for next? Well, we've got 5, maybe 6 options that we're going to go through. And essentially, I think this depends on so many things. Is the money there? Will we go for a cheap option? Are we going for an elite option, which will cost money? Will it be in January? Will it be in summer? What profile of striker are we looking for? But essentially, we do need one because Martial, unreliable. Rashford, is he a winger? And Cristiano Ronaldo, there is a sell-by date on Ronaldo. Whether he wants to go or whether he wants to stay, there is probably going to be a Ronaldo issue next season or the season after, or maybe even this season. As much as I love Ronaldo, we have to have a contingency plan. And I think Ronaldo is the player that we're continuing on from here because obviously he was player of the year and he scored 18 Premier League goals in a terrible side last year. That's a difficult thing to get hold of. Many clubs have tried it and failed. Bringing in a striker, it doesn't necessarily work. So United need to get this right. And I think with Erik ten Hag, we've got a manager that's already proven at United and very much proven at Ajax as a manager that can develop a player, improve a player. And I'm not even talking about a young player here. One player I want to talk about, first of all, before we talk about Osman and a few others, Brian Brobby at Ajax is a player that keeps being linked to Manchester United. I think he's even said himself that he will probably end up leaving Ajax at some point, but he'll get them a big fee. I mean, this is a big reason why Manchester United can't go for Brobby. We need a striker in the next 12 months. He has only just back signed with Ajax. I think his contract runs till 2026 or 2027. He's literally just signed back there. If United tried to get him in January or next summer, we know what Ajax would do. They'd probably want 80 million euros. So that is not a deal on the cards, I think, that you can discuss with any real conviction, because as much as it's obvious that Ten Hag likes him, that's a deal that we probably need to do in the summer, not next summer. So I'd rule that one out straight away. I'd rule this guy in. Victor Osimhen, playing for Napoli at the moment, was a player we were linked to in the summer. 23 years of age. I believe his contract runs out in 2025. So, in fact, the contracts are relevant here. But what have you got as a player? Well, look, he came over from France. I think they spent about 70 million quid on him, 70 million euros. So straight away, and we already know this from the summer, Napoli will want 100 million euros or more, but that's where the bidding will start. So straight away, you're going for a striker that's very, very expensive, using a large proportion of your transfer budget, if that transfer budget's actually there. So Osimhen would be an easy option for Manchester United fans and the club to say, let's have a look at him. But you're never going to move away from the fact that he's done well in France and he's done well in Serie A. And he's doing well for Napoli in a good side that he suits that system. He's strong, he's quick, he can finish, he's reasonably good in the air. He's an all-round striker, and I think that the profile of these strikers we're going to look at this morning are that sort of a striker. They're all, I wouldn't say they're similar players, but they have got the sort of traits. And also, I think they've got the potential to get better as well, because Osimhen's, 23? So, yeah, look, I think this is a player that many people would probably prompt as their number one. He's probably going to be the most expensive one on the list, arguably the most high-profile one on the list. But again, I would say, would I take Osimhen at Manchester United? Yes, I think he's exactly the sort of striker that we need. There has been concerns about his injuries. I'm not going to get into that. Most of those injuries are shoulder and facial injuries, I think. I don't think he's had major issues with his legs, which is where you become injury-prone, in my opinion. So, yeah, he's definitely a player I would like, but I think it'll be a very difficult deal to do. Napoli are no mugs. Very, very expensive. And also, he does have the ring of a player that Chelsea might go for, that Real Madrid might go for. So I don't think it would be an easy, cheap deal to do. I don't think you'd get value for money. And it's whether United want to spend big on a player like that. But look, certainly an option and certainly one of the better options. Option 2, and you know, we change course here. We go for a 28-year-old who's been at the club before, Memphis Depay. I think his contract was up in the summer and they've given him another year. So his contract, I believe, is up next summer. There's no doubt that Barcelona would move Memphis on, and there's no doubt that Memphis would move on. And I think he'd come back to Manchester United as well. He's also, not only would he be cheap, he's also going to be available in January. So a complete contrast to Osimhen, who wouldn't be available in January. Napoli wouldn't sell in January. They're going to be in the latter stages of the Champions League. They may well be in a race for the title in Italy, and they would be looking to do that deal in the summer, 100%. Whereas with Memphis Depay, you could do a deal cheap and in January. So these are the contrasts you've got. Would I prefer Osimhen over Memphis? Yes. Could United go for a cheaper, quicker option in Memphis? Of course they could. My concerns with Memphis Depay is I don't think he's a bad player. I have two major concerns. One, I don't think you should ever go back, really, unless it's exceptional circumstances like Ronaldo or maybe even a Pogba, but that didn't work out either. Memphis would come with a lot of scrutiny. We know what the media is like in this country, and he'd have to come back and be brilliant straight away and be consistently brilliant, because I think any hint of inconsistency or not being up to it would be devoured very, very quickly. And I suppose the other thing is 28 is not a problem. It's not the age, it's the talent. Is he the best option out there? And I think people would go, well, it's just another Dutch player and Ten Hag's Dutch. I don't mind the option of Memphis Depay, but I think this is the problem, isn't it? You know, straight away we can see the options between Osimhen and Memphis, and everybody knows that Memphis is not the option we should be going for. It should be Osimhen, but everybody knows that under this current regime, they'll probably steer more towards a Memphis because Osimhen's more expensive, and we'll let Chelsea and Real Madrid go and get Osimhen, and we'll go and get Memphis and fight with Fulham for him, and that's not what we want to do. We want to keep doing the deals that we have done. And I know that we're desperate, but the deals that we did, we need to keep doing those deals and focus on those deals. I think that's really, really important. So look, I do like Memphis Depay. I think there'll be people out certainly in the chat who were saying, yeah, let's go and get him. But for me, it's probably not the profile of player I would go for, if I'm being absolutely honest. But he will be an option, and he's a cheaper one. Another cheaper option, and certainly a player that's been linked to United over the years, is Moussa Dembele of Lyon. Seems to have been around for a very long time, but I think he's still only 26. He's a reasonable striker. He's out of contract in the summer. He may well sign a contract before then, but realistically, he's going to be available for free next summer, or very, very cheap in January. My major issue with Moussa Dembele is that he's been linked to United and other clubs over the years, but it's never happened. And you've got a player here that's out of contract in a year's time. And I think, when I think of Moussa Dembele, I think this is the sort of player that Newcastle would go for, but they didn't. They chose to spend £60 million on Isaac. So there's not a queue of clubs looking at Moussa Dembele, and I think that would have to be a big red flag for me at Manchester United, because sometimes if it's a bargain for a reason, and maybe people have looked at him and gone, yeah, he's decent, but he's not the profile of striker that's going to, make a big difference at the club. I feel that if we went for Moussa Dembele, he'd probably come into the squad and settle in as a bench option straight away, and that's not what we need. We need a player that's going to fight for first team football, like we've got now in some positions where, look, you could start either option, one of them's on the bench, and they're fighting each other for that place. Moussa Dembele, is he of that quality? I might be completely wrong on this, but I think this was a player that maybe 2 or 3 years ago you took a look at. I don't think it's a player that you look at now. I don't think there's a big queue of clubs looking at him. That doesn't mean he won't get a good move. I imagine in January and in the summer there'll be clubs that go, he's well worth taking a punt on because he's cheap, and you never know, what's the loss on it. Look at what Juventus did with Zakaria. They might look at a player like this as well. So, but whether it's right for Manchester United, I'm not so sure. This is interesting. And look, we are bringing the prices in. Osimhen would be about 100 million euros. Memphis is going to be very cheap. You're probably talking 10 million. Moussa Dembele, probably less than 20 if you go for him in January, free in the summer. Ivan Toney is a popular choice. Again, I think he's 26. Contract till 2025. You're looking at around 40, maybe even 50 million pounds from Brentford if you try and get him in the summer. Will he be part of the England World Cup squad? Don't know, but that certainly increases his profile. Is he a Premier League proven striker? Yes. Will he be able to do it in a better side? I think he would. And what I'm talking about here is, and I'm not saying it would happen, but I think if you put Toney up front for Chelsea or Arsenal or even Spurs, and I'm not saying that those players are going to buy him, but if you did, I think he would score you plenty of goals. I don't think he's going to be Erling Haaland. I don't think anybody is. But I do think that he is a striker that can offer things. And I certainly think he's the profile of striker that Ten Hag could improve as well. The fact that he's in his mid-20s doesn't mean that he can't be improved. And I like it. I like the look of this deal. I think a lot of people like the look of this deal. And I certainly think Brentford would need to be cashing in on him 2023 next summer 2 years left on his deal. I think it's the time for him to move, and I think he probably will move. But again, yeah, I suppose he's one of the more expensive options. I like the strings to. Then he said string to Brent's bow. I'm thinking about Brentford and David Brent. The strings to Tony's bow. He's good in the air. He can score a free kick now. Obviously, he's very good in the box. He's got a little bit of finesse to him, as we've seen in recent games. So, and he is Premier League proven. He knows what the league's all about. I would prefer Osman over Tony, but I would certainly consider Tony because I just don't see an Erling Haaland out there at the moment. I just don't see a Benzema or one of these absolute elite strikers. I don't see them available, and I don't think that we're in a position to get them either. I think we're still going to have to buy players that maybe the big clubs don't really want at the moment, but they could potentially become really, really good. So, and I think when we think about strikers, we're thinking about the Ronaldos and the Haalands of this world who are just the spear point of your team, the superstars. But actually, you can have a striker who plays up front who isn't the superstar, but is still ridiculously consistent and important in your team. And Ivan Toney might be worth a look for Manchester United. It'll be expensive, but I don't think it'd be silly expensive. I'm saying maybe 40 million's a bit cheap, but I certainly think around that 50 million mark, which is reasonable for a striker. There's a risk, of course there is. Can he make that step up? Is he that good? Is Brentford his level? And what I mean by that is, some people might remember a player called Kevin Phillips. I think he won the Golden Boot one year at Sunderland. Got called up for England. Prolific goal scorer, but was never good enough to play for Manchester United or one of the top teams. But he was a Premier League striker who'd score a lot of goals for Sunderland. And I don't know whether that's in the mentality of the modern football fan anymore. When I was growing up, you used to get that. You get people like Rob Lee at Newcastle, who was a brilliant goal-scoring midfielder. Matt Le Tissier at Southampton. Kevin Phillips. There was countless players that sort of played at the outside the top six who were prolific Premier League players, but probably weren't good enough or didn't want to test themselves at the big clubs. So, look, maybe Ivan Toney falls into that category, but maybe he becomes something better than that. And then we've got Jonathan David, who I must admit, this is a possibility. Again, he's a player with 2025 on his contract, so next summer's key for him from Lille. A young player as well. He's 22, so he would be the youngest player in these options that we've got. I mean, his profile as a Manchester United option is predominantly because of fans who think he'd be worthy, or Fabrizio Romano mentioned it on the show last Monday, didn't he? That this is a player that if he has a good World Cup could become a possibility. I think he's an interesting one. I wouldn't put him in the same category as Moussa Dembele, but I would say that clubs have looked at him and gone, I mean, wasn't it Fabrizio said he was available for about 40 million in the summer and nobody went for it. He's probably a player that people have looked at and gone, I don't know whether he's quite ready yet, but the World Cup is coming. He will be playing for Canada. That can put you very much in the public eye, front and house. He's quick. He's strong. He can score a goal. There's development there based on his talent. Being in France and coming to the Premier League is a step up. And there's development there in relation to age. That might be the sort of striker United want. And we've not really mentioned that. We've spoken about the type of striker. We've spoken about the price of the striker. The Osmans are going to be 100 million, and you've got people like Moussa Dembele and Memphis, which would be quite cheap. You've got Ivan Toney, who's sort of in the middle. I think with Jonathan David, you're putting him into the Ivan Toney category. He's probably going to cost about 40-50 million again. But he's also probably the most developmental one. And that could be very important. Do United want an experienced striker that comes in, like a Memphis? Or do they want a developmental striker that comes in who's ready to go but has still got a lot that you can teach and develop him in? I personally think that if you're going between a Memphis at 28 and a Jonathan David at 22, I would go down the Jonathan David route because it's something new, it's fresh, that can be developed. But Man United might not do that. We might go down the more experienced route. So it's a really interesting profile to look at because we know it's a position. It's not like a nice to have position. I'd like us to have another centre back brought in. I really would. We have to bring a striker in. Martial, I think, could be really good, but could also stay injury prone. You can't build a team around that. Ronaldo, there's uncertainty there for many reasons, as we know. And Rashford, if he becomes a striker, I think he becomes a very distinctive striker. He's very much the ball in behind. And I personally think he plays better off the left with when he's running at goal rather than with his back to goal. So I think a specialist striker has to come in. And of course, there may be a multitude of strikers that we've not even mentioned. There will be. But I'm still very hopeful that there's a striker out there that just comes sort of from under the radar that might be banging in a few goals for Salzburg or in the French league or in the Portuguese league or, you know, the Italian league or whatever. And maybe in the Championship, I don't know. But I'm hoping that there is that sort of striker there that's going to come through, because they do. 4 or 5 years ago, no one knew who Haaland was. And Nunez and everybody else. These players will come through, and it could happen it could happen this season. And United need to be alert to that as well. But it is going to be a very interesting position, and I'd be very interested to say what your top 3 would be. My top 3 options right now for strikers at Manchester United. And look, I'm not going to be dictated to by budget. So number 3 for me would probably be Ivan Toney. Actually, no, I don't think it would. I think it would be Jonathan David at number 3. I think it would be Ivan Toney at number 2. And I think it would be Victor Osimhen at number 1 at the moment. And obviously, we've covered those players. But, yeah, I mean, Brian Brobby, you can just cancel that. That's not going to happen. That ship has sailed. We're not going to get him from Ajax after 1 year back at Ajax. And it would be very expensive. And I don't think we can continue chucking 10, 20, 30 million euros more than a player's worth at Ajax. I think we've got to be a little bit more cute than that. And now that we've got more time, I think that we will be. But it is a position that we need to address. And as I said, for me, I don't think money should be an object. It probably will be. I'd prefer somebody with a little bit of development in them. And I think you've got to go for somebody that's ready to take that step up. Every signing's a risk. I think Osimhen's a risk at double the price of Toney, but he could be double the player. That's the player I would go for. But we know under the Glazers that you never know whether that money's available. And also, you're not going to get Victor Osimhen in January. You might get Jonathan David in January. You could certainly get a Moussa Dembele or a Memphis in January. You're probably not going to get Ivan Toney in January. Although Brentford, if they're mid-table, they're not in Europe, they might look at doing a deal like that. So United certainly have to keep many options open. And so much of it will be about the profile of striker that Erik ten Hag wants. And you've got to drop into the fact that if you did spend 100 million euros on Osimhen next summer and United are in the Champions League, does Ronaldo want to go? Does Martial want to go? Does Rashford still want to play up front? You've suddenly got 4 strikers. So we do need to bring a striker in, but next summer you're going to have to probably move one of those options on. Maybe it's Martial if he can't stay fit. Maybe it's Ronaldo if he doesn't want to stay anymore. But yeah, it's definitely an important position. I'm very interested to see what your comments are below. Give us your top 3. Smash a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe. And if you didn't see the goalkeeper one, I'll drop a link in the description as well. Speak to you in a bit. Thanks for watching.